What up, everybody? It's your boy Sack the King up in this motherfucker, man. Back with another life story, because I told y'all I'm giving y'all 30 life stories for the month of September, which has 30 days. Now, if you're a returning subscriber, I appreciate you. If you're a returning viewer, I appreciate you too, but make sure you hit that subscribe button below so you can be the first to know and you can help the channel grow if you haven't already. Now, as y'all can see from the title, these are the two things that I haven't done as a gangster. I've done every gangster thing you can think of in the book, from the smallest, pettiest gangster thing to the most serious gangster thing, right? And some of these things I've already spoken on because they're far past the statute of limitations, and some of that shit they can't prove. But there's some shit I will never speak on, and I'll let your mind do its due diligence with the imagination. But just know this: I've done every gangster thing that is considered gangster in the book. You feel me? Everything that you can think of, I've done, my nigga, except for these two things, and here's why. The first thing I haven't done, right? The very first thing I haven't done is rob a bank. And y'all probably thinking like, yeah, that's some gangster shit for a nigga to go in there and rob a bank. You know what I mean? I haven't robbed the bank. That's the one gangster thing I haven't done. I done sold drugs. I done sold damn near every drug you can think of. I done robbed, burglarized, pulled kick doors, busted at niggas. I done did every gangster thing you can do in the book except for rob a bank. That's the one thing that I haven't done out of two, right? That you can do to be considered a gangster. You know what I mean? Now, I've left the street life alone, coming up on 5 years on the 26th of this month. And I'll probably make an anniversary video about that and probably tell y'all about another crime that I can tell y'all about because, hey, statute of limitations is over with. But you're not going to hear me talk about none of the serious shit that I could probably still go to prison for, even if it's been over 20 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, I ain't gonna do that. But I will give y'all from time to time some of these petty crimes or some of these attempted crimes that just didn't work out. If you scroll my page, you've already seen a few of these stories I've told, right? So I know you're probably thinking like, why you never fucking robbed no bank? I had this cousin named Victor, right? Shout out to my cousin Victor, VP, 83rd Street Hoover gang. You know what I'm saying? He's an OG of the Hoovers in LA. And I remember when we lived in 29th Street Apartments, my cousin Victor, I don't know if he was on the run. I don't know if he had just gotten out from YA or what. But my cousin Victor used to stay in jail since like 13, right? Maybe even before that. I'm going to do an interview. When I start doing these interviews and get this laptop shit and this YouTube shit figured out, I'm going to start doing interviews. And that's one of the very first interviews I'm going to do because my cousin has a very interesting life story. He's changed now. I mean, don't get me wrong. He's still with the shits. He's still an active member in his neighborhood. But he's not doing crimes or nothing like that. You know what I'm saying? But shout out to my cousin VP if you see this, man. Victor, you feel me? Peavy. If any of y'all Hoovers know him, Victor Peavy, man, OG, 83rd Street Hoover. Anyways, I remember hearing stories about my cousin Victor robbing banks at 13. This is all documented. My cousin Victor was robbing banks at 13. Now, I have to ask him, but I'm wondering if he was part of them crews that was robbing banks for Freeway Ricky back in the days. Because Freeway Ricky used to have, if you don't know who Freeway Ricky is, not the rapper, Rick Ross, I'm talking about the real Freeway Ricky. Do your homework, like FBJ Main say. Do your homework. He used to have a couple of crews that used to hit banks back in the day. You know what I mean? But I'm not sure, and he's from the Hoover neighborhood too, which makes me think was my cousin hitting licks for these niggas. Older niggas back in the day. But I remember my cousin Victor was hitting banks at 13 years old, like with grown ass men running off strong arming banks. You know what I'm saying? And he ended up getting caught. He ended up doing time in YA. Later on went to prison for that shit. But he's out now. You know what I mean? But I want to get him on here to tell his story. But I remember he used to write us letters, and that nigga would be in the pen hella swole and shit. And I was like, man, I don't never want to go to prison. Like, mind you, I'm trying to be a Crip. I'm trying to gang bang and shit. Not at this time, you know what I'm saying? Because my cousin Victor is like 5 years older than me. So when he was like 13, I was like 8 or 9 hearing these stories, you know what I'm saying? But I'm surrounded in the neighborhood by Crips, which eventually I would get put onto my neighborhood and have to go put in work, you know, which is the details I will never share on here. But yeah, I was putting in work for my neighborhood at a very young age, and thankfully I never got caught up in that shit that I was doing, because some of that shit I could probably still go to prison for. You feel what I'm saying? And you know, that's the last thing I wanted to do, is see my mom having to come visit me in prison. But anyways, my cousin Victor was robbing banks, you know what I mean? I remember him going to prison, and that nigga was sending us pictures, and that nigga was swole as fuck, and I just admired. And you know, it's been 2 cousins who I always admire. My cousin BJ, who kind of like, he didn't officially, but he was kind of like the usher of me to joining the Gardens, you know what I mean? The Garden Block Crips. But because my dad was a Crip from LA, if y'all seen my video on that, but he never was like pushing, like he didn't want that for his sons. He was from where he's from, but my dad came to Sac to change his life, and even though we stayed in a neighborhood full of Crips, he never was a part of the Garden Block. He just was cool with everybody in the Garden Block. But my dad's from Avalon, 53rd Street, you know what I mean, in South Central. So, but you know, I always looked up to my cousin Victor for them stories I used to hear about him robbing banks, and my cousin BJ, who was a member of the Garden Block at 13, 14. But my cousin BJ's, like I said, he's probably like about 5 years older than me too. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to both my cousins. But that's the one of the 2 things that I never did as a gangster is rob no bank. You know what I mean? And as I grow up older and older, I'm like, I just realized that was some of the dumbest shit that a motherfucker could do, because you damn near gonna get caught. There ain't been too many black bank robbers who haven't got caught eventually. You know what I'm saying? But I used to hear the stories about my cousin being 13 with like 2 or 3 cars. I'm like, God damn, like that nigga's a gangster. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, the second most gangster thing I can think of that I have never done is sell crack. I've never sold crack. I sold every other drug you can think of, but I never sold crack. And the reason why I've never sold crack is because I seen that shit so much in my neighborhood as a kid. As a kid. In my neighborhood, there was only one way in and one way out. If you know Sacramento and Florin Meadows, there's only one way in and one way out, still to this day. This is before they put the gate up. This is before the black gate. This is when Florin Meadows was still painted blue. You feel me? And every park, when you're coming in, it's like a big horseshoe. You come in and it's a big ass project, and you got to go all the way down about a half a mile and come and loop and come back out about a half a mile. But it's like 3 or 4 parking lots in between while you're going in. And I used to come home from school or just be in the projects and see niggas running up the cars and selling drugs and selling crack and everything like that. And I used to be like, shit, I want to be like that. I want to be a gangster too. You feel me? Because when I was growing up, that was all that there was around me, was gang banging and dope slanging. You feel me? And a little bit of pimping here and there. But it was mainly cripping and gang banging. You know what I'm saying? And dope slanging, right? But the reason why I never sold crack as an adult, or, you know, I never was recruited to do that as a young kid by nobody, because my parents were well known in Florin Meadows, and I don't know, just nobody ever tried to recruit me. I got recruited later on after we moved from Florin Meadows by one of my cousin's friends, you know what I'm saying? Rest in peace to, you know, Lil Evil out of 29th Street, you know what I mean? Albert Dawson is who put me on officially to 29th Street Gangsta Crips, or Garden Block Crips. But I never sold crack as an adult. Even though I sold all these other drugs, I never sold crack. And the reason why is because, man, I remember having classmates whose parents was on crack. My parents was never on drugs. I never seen my parents do any drugs ever in my life. My parents would drink every now and then. My dad and mom smoked a little weed, sold a little weed on the side, but my parents never sold any drugs or did any drugs. You know what I mean? My parents were some hustlers, but they had different hustles. And my parents was some hardworking people, which they still are to this day, hardworking people. You know what I'm saying? Their goal was to get us out of the projects, which they did, you know. But I used to always see there were certain classmates who parents was on crack, who aunties or uncles was on crack in the projects. And not only did I see the effect that it had on their family members, but I remember like them getting teased in school for not being able to dress like my parents always kept me fresh. Even though we stayed in the projects, my parents always kept me fresh. You know what I'm saying? But I remember I had best friends who parents was on crack, or mama was on crack, or daddy was on crack, or aunts and uncles, and they couldn't have the same kind of shoes or clothes and shit like that. And I just used to always be like, man, like even at a young ass age, I understood the effects that crack had on our community, and especially in my environment that I'm from, 29th Street and the Gardens as a whole. Like 90s, a lot of people were on crack, and you would see them walking up and down 29th Street just looking zoned out. And I never wanted to, like, I always told myself, like, man, I'll never sell crack. Like, this shit is like the devil. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I never have, and I never will sell crack. I've sold coke, you feel me? I've sold every other drug you can think of, but I never rocked none of that coke up for crack. You know what I'm saying? Because, and it don't make it no better that I've sold other drugs, but I just told myself I just never wanted to sell crack, because that shit left a lasting impression on me as a kid, just seeing people how they was, black people, and I just didn't want to be a part of none of that. Even though, you know, I've done other crimes against black people that I'm not proud of and that I probably will never speak on. Like, I don't know, for some reason just selling crack just seemed like worse than shooting at niggas, you know what I'm saying? Which is also not a good thing, but hey, it is what it is, you know. And so yeah, those are the two things that I never did. You know what I mean? There's a few other things that I've never done either. You know what I mean? That doesn't have anything to do with being a gangster, and that is drink E&J. I don't drink no E&J. I haven't drank no E&J because I used to see winos. If they wasn't on crack, they was on E&J, just saying stupid shit, being stupid, getting beat up, whatever. So I told myself I will never drink that, because if I drink that shit, I'm gonna end up like these fools, being a bum and a junkie and a wino. You know what I mean? So see them niggas at McDonald's right there on Florin Road asking for money and shit. Like, I never wanted to be like that. So that shit like left something in my mind like, nah, I don't want to drink no E&J. Like, and this is before I ever even had a sip of alcohol or anything. I always told myself, like, if it's E&J, I ain't drinking that shit, because I just see so many people drinking that. Another thing I never do is shoot dice. I don't shoot dice. Never wanted to shoot dice, because I've seen people get shot over a dice game. I've seen 2 people get shot over a dice game. They didn't die, but they got shot and beat up. I've seen like 3 or 4 more motherfuckers get beat up in my lifetime as a kid from shooting dice. So I told myself, those 2 things that I mentioned earlier, robbing banks and selling crack, I've done every gangster thing except for those 2 for the reasons that I gave y'all. But there's other 2 things that I can think of that just had stigmas in my mind. Was I'm never going to drink E&J liquor, because you're going to be a wino and a bum and nothing in life. And I ain't going to shoot no dice, because nothing good has ever, I've never seen nothing good come out of a dice game, my nigga. And yeah. So anyways, man, it's your boy Sack the King up in this motherfucker, man. If you already know me, you know, man. You know what time it is. Y'all don't have to believe anything I say on YouTube, but there's people that can verify every story that I'm telling on YouTube. So stay tuned for more. Hit that subscribe button below so you can be the first to know and help the channel grow, man. And I'm out.